This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze, the journey through life. And we're all on that journey. And some of us have a little bit more control over it than others. I really thought I knew where I was going to be at this stage of my life. And you know what? I'm glad I am where I am, but this is not where I thought it was going to be. And I have a feeling my guest today, Tony Schmaltz, is going to tell us the exact same thing. And so I want all of you who are listening to understand that, you know what? It's okay. Where you are right now is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And if you want to go somewhere else, then it's time to start working on that. So, Tony, welcome to Avoid the Maze. And wow, as I read about your journey, it sure has been an exciting one. You go up and then you go down, and then sometimes you'll level off. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit.
So there's some things that aren't actually in that story that really add to this. So in 2018, my family and I moved across country from Seattle to Panama City, Florida for a job change. And this job was supposed to be the next best thing. You know, I was moving on up, and we got there 2 months before Hurricane Michael came and leveled the whole place. So Category 5 hurricane, welcome to Florida. And turned out that place I was working at, even though I gave it some time after the recovery, turned out it was the worst place I had ever worked in my entire life. It was horrible leadership, just negative, 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 negative. And I had been a positive leader for most of my career. And so it was at that time that I hired my first coach, my first personal coach. And that was really what I needed. It came on a recommendation from a friend because I needed some help. I was out of my own mind. I was just losing it. I was miserable every day. And my wife was like, you got to do something different. This is not working. And so after a while, I started going, yeah, this is what I really want to do. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and this same company decided to lay me off in 2021. And I am that guy who's been a high performer, never even had a sticky note in my file before. So when I walked into HR and they said, we don't need you anymore, I was like, what? So that's really, really what hit me. And so that was one of the big downs was going, wow, okay, so I'm barely got any income. I was coaching on the side, but I was doing it as a hobby. I wasn't trying to make it a full-time gig yet. And my coach, first person I called was my wife, and she's very supportive, and she was still at work. She's like, we'll talk later. I'm like, cool. Second person I called was my coach. And my coach sat there, listened to me tell the story, and he said, congratulations. And I said, what? He said, you were miserable there. And you've been telling me for 2 years that if you could coach full time, you could make it work. Here's your chance. So I went from virtually no income to creating a coaching practice that was doing better than what I was making in the corporate world.
Sure.
So that was really the first big down to up was right there.
So, it's interesting because I love what you're talking about when you're talking about the company. Some of us don't realize there are different cultures from one company to another. And I know I was working for a for-profit college, worked for them for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, it was the best culture. I loved it. Everybody was, everybody was an individual.
Right.
And we took your talents and we allowed you to grow. And then you were taught other things along the way. But about 6 years into it, I transferred to another campus. Little did I know the culture that I was used to was only at the campus that I was working on.
Wow.
And all of a sudden it was like, I love what I do, but I can't handle this pressure.
Right.
And what I want people to understand is that sometimes for our own health, for our own mental state, and for our family, as tough as it is, we've got to walk away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in your case, you didn't walk away. They pink slipped you away. So at least in your mind, did you at least say, okay, well, at least until I figure something out, I can collect unemployment and look for another job?
So actually, no. So my intention was to walk away. I actually had it on the calendar. So I was laid off in September of 2021. My plan was I actually had it written on my monitors on my home office that March 1st, 2022 was my last day. So I had already had it planned to do that. So
Sure.
they just gave me the grounds to do it sooner. And I had to really pick myself up by my bootstraps to make it happen so that I didn't have to go find another job.
Right.
And so that really, it was really eye-opening. You know, it's when you want something bad enough, you find a way to make it work. And that means even having to walk away from something else. If you know you're miserable at that place you're at, then you'll find a way to make it work somewhere else or how
Yeah.
to get out of there. You just got to want it bad enough.
So we know that coaching today is a catch-all.
Mm,
I mean, I hate going on social media and hearing, oh, I don't have to advertise, for clients. Oh, I don't have to do this, or I have the best program for you to be the
right.
best coach. And what I tell my listeners and my clients is, yes, there are a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of teachers out there. There's a lot of doctors out there, but it's finding the person that you relate to. And oftentimes we bring our stories into their journey, not to
Yeah,
tell them to go right or left, but to make them feel a little bit more comfortable that, you know what, you're not alone. I've made
exactly.
mistakes too. So what was it
Exactly.
like when you first started? Because I know my first client, even though I had done something very similar at the college,
Hmm.
when I was doing it on my own for the first couple times, I felt like I was an imposter. I
Yeah.
just didn't feel like I had the right to do this.
I'm the same way. And I still get imposter syndrome from time to time. In fact, on my phone, I set a reminder that goes off daily. It goes off daily at noon that says I am enough. So that every day at noon, I look at my phone and I see that I am enough. I have a sticky note on my computer screens that says I am enough. So it's trying to remember that because it doesn't matter how good of a coach you are, how successful you get, there's always somebody out there that you're going to look at and go, wow, I could be better. That could be like that. And you're just always getting that compare-itis, I call it. And so for me, I just have to keep reminding myself because I was big time. When I first started out, I was just like you're talking about. I was like, who's going to hire me? I'm not that guy. I'm not Steve Chandler or Steve Hardison or Rich Litvin. I mean, who am I? And it was talking not only to my own coach, but to another very well-known coach who said, guess what? You know what? To be a life coach or be a personal coach, you just need to have a heartbeat. And I said, okay, well, wow, that's an interesting way of looking at it. And so it's just about helping people. You can always help somebody. Now, it may take you 20 somebodies to find the one that you can help, but you can always help somebody. And it's funny when you talked about your listeners looking for somebody out there. It used to be a lot different when we were started out as coaches. And then when the pandemic hit, everybody decided they're going to be a coach.
Right.
And it just,
Exactly.
and so now you have to filter through more. The way I explain it to people, I'm like, feel free to have a conversation with as many people as you want to find the right person for you. However, what I've found and my clients have found is that usually in the first 10 minutes of a conversation, you know that person's aligned with you.
Exactly.
And it's just that gut feeling. You're like, oh, I love this person's personality. The way they're telling stories aligns with my beliefs. I'm like, and it may take 10 or 15 people. And I'm more than happy to send somebody somewhere else. I've had many times where somebody's gotten on a call with me and I'm like, you know what? I don't think we're a right fit together. However, I'm going to send this person to you because I think you'd be great with them.
Yeah. And I've been in fact, I did that. I do it all the time, but right in the beginning, um, I think probably the first 10 or 15 people came to me. I referred them because
Yeah.
again, I wasn't feeling that I could help them.
Right.
Um,
Right.
And I work with two coaches right now. One is a grief coach.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people would say, well, a grief coach, did you lose a loved one? Why are you going to a grief coach? And I started out because my brother-in-law had passed away and we did not have a relationship, not
Mm,
because of me, but because of things on his side.
right.
And when he passed, I felt lost.
Mhm.
And when I went to the grief coach regarding that, all of a sudden I realized that grief is about any kind of loss.
Right.
And so I continue on because there are many losses in my life. And I don't want to go back and say, oh, wow, everything is terrible. I lost this, this, and this. I can find something positive out of those
Yes.
and I can heal myself. At the same time, when I talk about being an imposter, um, I also work with another coach and we talk about intentionality.
Yes.
And it helps me realize, okay, I'm intentionally doing this. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So give me some ideas. I come to you, another person comes to you, and, Tony, I'm really lost. Um, don't know if I like my job. Not sure if I like my family. Um, and boy, I want to be making six figures like everybody else on Facebook, which we
Right.
know not everybody is making six figures.
Almost most of them that say they aren't.
So what are some of the things that you talk about? What are some of the tools that you and your clients can use?
Well, the first thing that I usually bring up is first I ask, what is it you really want? And what do you want to create? And usually, like you said, it's either I want a better relationship, or I want to make more money, I want to get out of this job and have a business that I love, whatever that is for that person. I usually start there. And then the next question I always ask is, what do you think is keeping you from getting there? And again, even if it's the relationship, they might point the finger at their spouse or significant other. They might point the finger back at themselves. Whatever that is, it's a starting point. It doesn't mean it's the reality yet. We haven't gotten that far,
Right.
but it is the starting point. And then the last question I always ask is, who do you need to be to get there? And it's does because sometimes we're not the person. In fact, most of the time when somebody starts out, they're not the person they really want to be or need to be to have that life they're looking for. And so that's where I start. Who do you need to be? And they'll usually add on to what they currently are and add some other aspects to that. So those are the three questions I usually start with when I'm having a conversation with somebody. And then the next piece of that I absolutely love is what I call, did you know that the words creating and reacting have the exact same letters, just rearranged? Because we can choose to be a reactor or we can choose to be a creator. And so I try to help guide people on how to create things in their lives, not react to things in their lives. And it's really huge. And it's challenging, especially like you're talking about when you've had grief or you've had trauma in your past. Trying to get past the reaction piece of that is not an easy task. However, when you can move that from reacting to creating, the sky is the limit. Anything is possible.
I read something yesterday, somebody put down, and they were talking sort of about Mother's Day holidays type thing. And they were talking about all the things that have gone wrong over the years regarding Mother's Day. And I just wrote very simply, those were just learning steps. Let's go back and see what didn't work and what can you do for next year to make things work. And I was one of those reactors for a very long time. But it was when I left my corporate job and I said, what am I going to do now? And it was, I know what I want to do. But number one, I thought, for some reason, I thought my husband was going to laugh at me if I told him. So yeah, I was like holding back.
Yeah.
I was the top breadwinner in the family. So I was also afraid, oh, you need to go get another good job. I had a young adult son still living with us, and I was thinking, is this a good thing for him to see mom's not employed? I've been employed his whole life. So everything was negative on me. And so I was trying to react to if my husband laughs at me, if I don't go out and get a good job. But I finally sat the two of them down and I said, number one, if I'm not depressed, I'm on the road to be depressed because I could just feel my body wasn't working properly.
Right.
It's number two, I know what I want to do. And my husband just looked at me and said, so what's that? Now, this is 10 plus years ago. I said, I want to be a podcaster. And the question he asked me was why? And I said, I want to share my experiences with others, but I want to learn from them.
Right.
So when I say, hey, I got divorced and this happened, well, wow, they're going to tell me something about them, either their wonderful marriage, somebody else they knew who got divorced. I started learning. He said, hey, that's a great idea. What do you need to do it? And I went online, I researched, and of course I got all the expensive stuff because I thought I needed it all,
Right.
Which I don't. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that we can change
Yes.
when it's something that you know you want to do. But when you go through change, that can change a lot of things. Economics, family relations.
Yep.
And as I keep saying, your success is something that you individually have to feel.
Yeah.
So my success is not based on what my ratings tell me. I might have 1,000 listeners today and I may have none tomorrow.
Right.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. As long as you're satisfied, as long as you're happy with what's going on. And that's this is one of the things, again, back to some of the clients. This is not immediate, of course, because we work through some of the other things. However, when we get to that point where I know we're at that point with these clients, is I'll ask them, I said, can you look yourself in the mirror and truly say, I love you? Can you look at yourself in the eyes and say, I love you? And if not, what is keeping you from that? What is keeping you from that? Because in order to move forward, we really need to accept who we are and know who we are. It's okay if that's not who you want to be yet. However, you still need to accept that. When you hide the person behind the mask, so to speak, because you're afraid of what other people are going to think, then you're never going to be able to move forward into the person you need to be or want to be or could be. And so I love to hear you say that, because it is about the personal satisfaction and the personal love and the personal feeling of accomplishment, regardless of the rest of the noise out there.
And there's a lot of noise out there. And
Yes,
those are some of the things that we have to learn, how to shut off. My husband laughs at me because I happen to wear hearing aids, and he'll say, but you can shut it off. Take your hearing aids out. And it's like, but the noise is really in my head.
Yeah, yes, it is.
What I've heard people say before, or what I'm assuming other people are thinking. And when we get into that position, it can really destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand that, number one, we all hear voices.
Yep.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
But try to understand what those voices are saying. And I think of, the old-fashioned cartoons with the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. When you hear those bad voices, listen to them and say, what can I do differently?
Mm-hmm.
And then brush it off your shoulder.
Yeah.
So you don't do it wrong again.
Yeah.
So as a client, and this is a question I always get, well, how many sessions do I have to have with you, Tony, before I feel the success? I feel the change that I'm looking for.
Yeah. So I have a minimum, a bare minimum of 12 sessions, which you can do over 90 days or 6 months. You can do every week or every 2 weeks. And the reason I do that is because there's transformation doesn't happen overnight. I used to try to do 4 sessions or 2 sessions, things like that. And it didn't work. People weren't seeing the results. They weren't seeing the changes. To really transform yourself, whether it's your personal life, your career, your business, whatever that is for you, it really takes at least 12. And then I usually recommend people go for the bigger package for at least a year. But 12 is my minimum. And even then, those folks have to be incredibly dedicated to what we discuss in order to see the results and see the transformation.
And that's the big thing for coaching, that you have to be dedicated to yourself to want to make the changes. I have a woman who came to me, sort of know her, we met through other people, let's put it that way. It was online. She desperately said she wanted to change.
Right.
But she thought she was too old to change. And I said, we're never too old to change. We can always make a change. And the first 2 sessions, all she could do was spill out all of her negativity.
Right.
And I said, if that's what you need to get over it, I'm going to let you do that. But after the second session, I said, no more. Let's find one positive thing. One positive thing. Do you like the color of your eyes, your hair, your smile, of food? Get anything, just one thing. And she cried that whole session because she couldn't think of any. And she's a beautiful woman. And when I said that, she said, don't tell me that. I've been told that my whole life, but I don't feel beautiful. I realized at that point I was not the coach for her.
Right.
But I made some recommendations. She went through about 3 or 4, but she finally found somebody who just could really pull it out of her.
Right.
She has transformed in about 1.5 years.
Nice. Very nice.
But she's told me, I will keep this coach in my life for the rest of my life, because she knows the coach is one of her tools.
Yep.
The coach is not telling her what to do, but the coach keeps hinting, how could you do that differently?
Right.
So are there any specific tools? And when we talk about tools, I hope my listeners understand by now, I'm not talking about hammers and screwdrivers. But are there any particular tools that you use and you recommend to your clients to help them get through whatever that stressful thing is?
Yes, absolutely. And this is something that we typically work on early on, is developing a positive morning routine. I mean, we're human beings. It's okay to wake up on the wrong side of the bed. However, it's your choice to stay there or not. And so I usually start with a morning routine, and I'll use my own as the example,
Sure.
although everyone's different. And we always try to find what works for each person. So for me, the first thing I do, I get up and I make my bed. That's the first accomplishment of the day, make the bed. And then I go in and I look myself in the mirror and I read my declarations, which are my I am statements. I am love. I am passion. I have 2 pages of statements that are some very short, some very long in length. And I read those to myself and speak them out loud, looking myself in the eyes. And then from there, I meditate for at least 10 minutes, 10 to 30 minutes, depending on how my morning looks. And most of that is just breathing. First half is like breathing, and the second half is really getting into the vision of what I see for myself. Do I see myself losing some weight? Do I see myself, what do I look like? And it's not just seeing those, it's feeling them like they're already there, like they've already happened. Like I am already that person. I've already got that thing or that life, so that you can really get into that feeling. And then I read out of some sort of inspirational or motivational or educational book for 25 minutes. Then I journal for another 10 minutes, and then I do some light exercise, nothing heavy, just like whether it's a walk around a few blocks or some jumping jacks, just something to get the blood flowing. And those, for me, the combination of those things starts my day off on a positive note. And it's hard to take me down after that. And I finished the evening with similar activities to really start the day and end the day on a positive note.
So what you're doing are things that are good for you.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, those statements that you're making in the mirror remind me of when I was growing up. My father every morning would wake up. We had one bathroom in the house. There were 5 of us, and he'd get up early, and you'd hear him bellow, "Good morning, handsome." And that would obviously wake the rest of us up. But I never understood it until probably a year or 2 before he died. And I said to him, "Do you still do that?" And he goes, "Absolutely. Why?" I said, "Why do you do that?" He said, "Because I grew up during the Depression. I shared my clothes with my father and my brother. I had to have something that was mine. And what was mine was that person in the mirror."
Yep.
And it was like, what a unique way of thinking of things. When I used to hear that the first one who got to the dresser drawer got the cleanest shirt, I used to think of it as a joke. But that day he actually explained to me, yeah, whoever got there first. And he said, and typically it was my younger brother who got there first. And so I wore yesterday's shirt and my dad wore the shirt from 2 days ago. But that was his way of starting off his day.
Right.
When he came home from work, if he wasn't smiling, I would ruin his day. Not on purpose, but when he wasn't smiling, I thought it was because of me. So I took that as, oh no, what did I do wrong? And I would start up
Right.
almost every night. What did I do wrong? You're not smiling, Dad. Aren't you happy to be home? Look, here I am. And he'd get mad. And then he'd say, "I need some time." He'd go sit in his chair and he'd take a nap before dinner, and then he was okay. But my reaction to him is how I reacted to so many other people throughout my life.
Yeah.
And when it dawned on me, I don't know what you're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I making the assumption?
Right. Right.
So I love the fact that you start off your day. If I'm good with myself, you can't bring me down.
That's right. That's right. And I'm glad to hear you say what you just said about you worried about what he thought and thinking that it was you that made him upset. And there's my current coach, Kellen. He has an acronym he uses called WITOT, WITOT, and it stands for what I think others think. And he said it's the worst disease in the world. It kills more people than COVID.
He's right.
Yeah, it's really is. And it's so often that's one of the habits to try to break. And in my latest book, I actually have a whole chapter on getting over people pleasing, because it's the hardest thing for people to do. Is so much since we were little kids that we've been taught to please our parents, to please our teachers, to please our pastors at church, to please our bosses at work. We're so worried about what other people are going to think that we're afraid to take action, and we're afraid to be our real selves. And so many of us have our true selves on our inside, just itching to get out and never actually get there. I can't remember who was it said it, but it said something about, I can't remember whose quote it was, but it was something about don't die with your music still inside you. Let your music out.
Again, it reminds me of my last corporate job where I said I loved what I did, but the culture was killing me. And because the culture was killing me, every time I'd go to a meeting, every time I had to have a one-on-one with my manager, words got stuck in my throat. I felt like the D student in class. I was barely making it. Yet, when I got back to my desk and worked with my students, it all could come out. I was fine. And my numbers were fine. And so it wasn't like I was on the chopping block.
Right.
But in my head, as soon as I went to meet with them, for whatever reason, well, you're a level ahead of me, so you must be better than me.
Right.
And that was my growing up.
Yeah.
Now it's funny because when I do these podcasts, when I do coach, I just coached, and I'm sure he's coming back because he keeps telling me how much he's gained out of it. But he's the CEO of a large company here in Cleveland. And when he called me, my first reaction was, no, I've got plenty of other people who can take care of you. But in that first conversation, we clicked. I understood him. He understood me. And I think that was the really first time that I could look back and say, you know what? We are all people.
Yes.
Okay, you have a title. That's nice.
Yeah. You're right. You're 100%. And most people do that. And that's, it's interesting because a lot of people, they get starstruck too. Like if you see somebody that, has been on stage or somebody who's been in a movie or et cetera, people tend to get, oh my God, it's that person. And they get all excited, and they're just a person, just like you and me, just a person. So one of the, I'm actually friends with Kevin Sorbo, used to play Hercules, and Les Brown. These are friends of mine. And anytime I've introduced them to somebody, you see everyone get just all shell shocked, and you're like, guys, it's just a person. Just have a conversation. It's nothing. It's really just enjoy the moment.
Well, my brother sort of taught me that many years ago. He's in the music industry. We went out to LA, and he was working on a TV show. I don't remember which one, but he had my husband and I come and sit in the sound booth. And he said, now you're going to meet some people. They're just people. Do not act excited. Well, I have to tell you, I didn't know who these people really were because I didn't watch the program. So of course I wasn't excited. But afterwards, he took us out to lunch, and he said, now you're going to see very famous people. Do not stare. Don't. So we're sitting at a table, and next to us is Carol Alt, the model.
Wow.
And my husband notices her, and he's like, moves his seat so he's not looking at her. And after lunch, and we barely said 2 words at the whole lunch because we were afraid that we might say something that we shouldn't.
Right.
Got in the car, my brother said to my husband, are you dead? He goes, why? You know who was sitting like almost shoulder to shoulder with you? And he goes, yeah, but you told me not to get excited. He said, but you could have been friendly. You could have just like nodded or said hello. I said, oh. But from that point on, it was like I realized what he was saying, because she was just another person sitting at the table, although she was very beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
We all are people. We all can be famous if we push ourselves to get there. But we all have to identify what it means to us. And that goes back to the success.
Yeah.
What does success mean to you? Don't let anybody else identify it for you.
Exactly. And I love that you asked that question. I don't mean to keep shamelessly pitching my book, but
No, go ahead.
I actually have a chapter in there that also is called what does success mean to you? It is literally a title of one of my chapters. And for me, the short definition, the real short definition is success is the happiness in the areas of life that are important to me. And so it can be whatever that is. If it's my relationship, I'm happy in my relationship, that's success. If it's my relationship with my kids, that's success. If it's finances and I'm doing well there, that's it. It just, for most people, when you say, hey, when you talk success, most people immediately go to finances. They're like, oh, well, I want to have $1 million. I want to have $10 million. Well, are you sure that would make you happy? Is that really success? Is that going to make you happy? And so I'm glad that you brought it up that way and you said it that way. I love that you said it that way.
So when you made this career change, you have family, how supportive were they? Because it had to have been difficult. Hey, you came from a corporate job, you came home with benefits and a salary every day.
So it was interesting because we've got 4 and our 3 girls are already in their 20s. So at that point, they didn't have much to worry about. They were already on their own doing their thing. Our son was 15 at the time, 14 at the time. And so he was at that point, he understood something was going on. And I'm sure he knew more than what we're giving him credit for. However, he's very laid back. He kind of went with it. He's like, hey, mom and dad have this. We'll make sure. Now, my wife was super supportive. Although at the beginning, when things started to get really tight, she was working and then finances were getting really tight. She's like, all right, what are we going to do here? Are you going to start, like you said, are you going to start looking for a job? I'm like, no, I got this. Give me a chance. And sure enough, it was a very short-lived dip. And then things clicked. I don't know what it was. It was just all of a sudden I got that confidence. I got over that imposter syndrome and was able to start helping people and getting clients and going from there. And I've been very fortunate. My wife and I have been together for 21 years. And in that time, I've tried all kinds of different business ideas and side gigs that she's stuck with me throughout all of them. I give her tons of credit for following me on all my cockamamie schemes and wild adventures. And this now it's actually working out.
Well, and that's the journey of life.
Yeah.
Some of us feel that, and this goes back to my childhood. I remember I was 9 or 10 years old. It was a summer evening. We're sitting on the front porch. And I said to my mother, see that house down the street? And she goes, yeah. I said, someday I'm going to get married and I'm going to live in that house. And on Friday nights, we'll come to your house for dinner. And on Sunday morning, you'll come to my house for brunch. And she said, oh, honey, I hope that happens. 5 years later, we sell the house because we're moving from Michigan to Minnesota. So there's no way that I'm going to be living down the street from her anymore. And of course, I'm older. And so my mindset is different. And I remember when I got married, because I wasn't going to be living anywhere near my mother after I got married, she said to me, what happened to your dream? And I said, it changed. It changed with time. And she goes, are you okay with your dream? And at that time, I was. Little did I know I would be divorced 7 years later, but hey, I found another dream. And that's okay. That's what people have to understand. Those aren't mistakes. Those are things that happen in our life. They happen for a reason.
That's right.
And they give us guidance. And when you don't know what to do with that, that's the time to start talking to a coach.
That's exactly right. And I know a lot of people say this. A lot of people say everyone needs a coach. And now I throw a caveat on that. I'm like, every motivated person needs a coach. Now, if somebody doesn't want to change, then having a coach isn't going to do you any good. So let me rephrase it. Anybody who's motivated to change needs a coach. And it's something that I truly believe in. And I've had a coach. I haven't not had a coach since I started. And, I have had multiple coaches at some times and just one coach at one time, but I've always had a coach.
It's important because it helps keep us evolving.
Yes.
Because once you just get satisfied where you are, you get stale and things do happen around you. And the pandemic is one good example. How many people thought, hey, this is going to be my dream job the rest of my life. And that dream job went away in 2020. And you have to recreate yourself. And that's all right. So how can we find you and how can we find your books? And maybe a few clients will come your way.
So you can find me at any of the social media platforms. Just search Tony Schmaltz, and otherwise go to my website, tonyschmaltz.com. And that has there has some free content, free videos, all my different programs, things about me, more about me that we haven't talked about yet. And you can find my book on Amazon. It's called Wake the Bleep Up. So it's just search Wake the Bleep Up and you'll find it. It's the first one that pops up. And it's really powerful.
And I want you to tell everybody, why do they call you Schmaltzy? Besides the fact your last name is Schmaltz.
Okay. So this actually started when I was 17 years old. I was on an exchange program in Germany. I took German in high school and went on an exchange program one summer. And I went over there, and after a few days, all the friends I was hanging out with, they all started calling me Schmaltzy. And I was like, I just thought it was a play on my last name, being Schmaltz as being my last name. So I didn't really get it. So the whole time goes by and then the next summer, my host brother from Germany comes and stays with me. And we take a road trip together, and he starts calling me Schmaltzy again. And I was like, Schmaltzy, what is that? Why are you guys calling me that? And he's like, you don't know? And I'm like, no. He's like, well, because when you were over there last year, he's like, you were hitting on all the girls and you were using the cheesiest pickup lines I'd ever seen. And so that's when he explained to me that the word schmaltzy, the German definition of the word schmaltzy, means to be overly sappy or cheesy, like a joke is cheesy. And so that's why they called me schmaltzy. So at 18 years old, when we're on this trip, I'm kind of offended. I'm like, what? That's garbage. What's that all about? So fast forward 25 years, and I'm now a full-time coach, and I'm trying to figure out what's going to separate me from the rest of the coaches out there. And one night I had a dream about that moment where he explained what schmaltzy was. And I woke up that morning and went, that's it. I am schmaltzy. That is who I am. And it legitimately is who I am. I am overly sappy and cheesy. And so,
I
so
love it. That
so
is wonderful.
I've owned that ever since.
Well, when I looked at your last name, so just so you know, in Yiddish, schmaltz it's fat. It's
Chicken fat. It's chicken fat.
Yep. And growing up, my mother would render the schmaltz from the chicken. And during the week, that was the oil that
Yep.
she would use. So I thought, oh, I wonder, if there's going to be a play on words there. So
Yeah.
I love it.
And it's funny. Most people recognize that the word that schmaltz means chicken lard or chicken fat.
Yeah.
So I have to clarify that when I talk to people, you need to look up the German definition, not the Yiddish definition.
Exactly. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to put all your information in the show notes. So when listeners say, hey, I don't remember how to get in touch, just go to the show notes. It'll be there. And we're on all the platforms. So there's no excuse for people not to either watch us on YouTube or listen on the platforms.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's been a wonderful pleasure.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye now.
Bye.